Hey guys, my name is Jake Rowland, and this is my Design Tools 1 Pecha Kucha assignment. I've decided to do it on traditional weapons from around the world, primarily because I have about 8 years experience both teaching and training in martial arts. So it's something I know quite a bit about, and I think it's also something that many people are interested in learning about. The first weapon I want to go over is called the bow staff. It's pretty much as primitive as you can be. It's just a long stick, and it actually has quite a bit of power behind it. So much so that the South Korean army actually still requires all of its soldiers to be trained in its use. And actually, there was a battle in World War II that was won primarily because of this weapon. Well, the three-section staff, at first glance, appears to be an odd hybrid of a bow staff and a nunchuck, but it's actually quite a capable weapon if you're skilled in its use. It's one of the more difficult ones to learn, but its flexibility can create quite a large zone of defense around you that can be quite hard to penetrate. Another really interesting style that I found was Kali. It was originally developed in the Philippines, and it's designed primarily for use with two staves or with knives. The ability to attack with both hands can create some really interesting angles and can catch a lot of opponents really, really off guard. The Kuiyang, or the spear as most people know it, was originally developed in China, and it's actually got a lot of versatility. It creates the same range and zoning potential that the bow staff does, but you also have stabbing and penetration potential because of the spearhead on it, which just increases the deadliness of it. Another really unusual weapon originally developed in South Asian countries is really just a simple cord. A lot of people underestimate it, but the ability to tie an opponent's hands to block their attacks and to really control their body is something that is really invaluable in any kind of fight. Working off of that idea is the rope dart. You take the simple cord and you add either a lead weight or more commonly kind of an iron dart to the end of it. It's one of those weapons that it's really hard to use, but if you know what you're doing, you can create a lot of damage. You can really control your opponent's body movements as well as penetrating them. The Guangdou, or the Chinese halberd, sacrifices a lot of the penetrating power of the spear, and you get the slashing power of a broadsword. It's more of a slashing weapon, and you can create big kind of circles of protection, but if someone gets in close, it can be very, very hard to use it effectively. The Chinese broadsword is very different from its English counterpart. English weapons tend to be large and heavy and rely more on just brute force, whereas the Chinese broadsword is more of a slashing weapon designed to be quick and broad strokes and create a lot of damage and kind of a circle around you. Sai is a really misunderstood weapon. A lot of people look at Raphael from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they look at it and they think it's a dagger. They think it's got sharp edges and that you're going to cut and slice with it, but it's actually just a pointed rod. It's more of a striking and breaking weapon used to lock your opponent's swords or weapons up. Kama, originally developed because they were rice cutters, and when the Japanese invaded Korea, they banned all weapons from the peasants. So they pretty much had to learn to use just regular farming tools as effective weapons in order to rebel against their Japanese overlords. The katana, I mean, this is just the absolute quintessential classic weapon of martial arts. It's a long, sleek sword. There's really no limit to the potential that you can do if you're really skilled in your use. The more you train with it, the more options are going to open up in any kind of battle with it. Speaking of English weapons, kind of moving away from Asia, the broadsword was originally developed in European countries and was mostly used by like Scottish Highlanders, guys with really big physical builds who could just straight up grab a 4 foot piece of iron and almost use it as a bludgeon. Which kind of brings me to the war maul, which takes all the slashing and cutting power of a sword and sacrifices it for just brutal force. The war maul is just a big piece of iron stuck on the end of a stick, and if you get hit with this, there's not much you can do about it. The battle axe is kind of an in-between. It was primarily favored by the Vikings and other Nordic tribes due to their just brawn and strength. And it has still the weight of a war maul, but it also adds some cutting power. It's not as powerful as a sword, but it can definitely penetrate armor if you hit it right. The Morning Star is also a European weapon. It's, in my opinion, not that effective. It really relies a lot on keeping up your momentum. If you got a lot of momentum behind it, you can hit someone, you can do a lot of damage, but once it stops moving, it can be really, really hard to start again. The English longbow. This is really the weapon that allowed the English military to dominate. The fact that it completely changed warfare. This allowed you to start a battle before anybody else. By the time their cavalry, their infantry, anything like that reached you, half of them were already dead. Originating in Europe, the rapier is a really slim blade. It was designed more for dueling than mass warfare. It's kind of considered almost a gentleman's weapon. It's not so much a slashing weapon as it is a penetrating and striking weapon, and that's why it's considered a little bit more refined. Moving over to kind of America, the American Indians used primarily the tomahawk, which is a very short axe that can either be thrown or it can actually be used in your hand as well. It's very effective at locking opponents' arms and their attacks up as well. The atlatl is actually a weapon that not a lot of people know about. Effectively, it's just a wooden extension of your arm, which, because it increases the length of your arm, it dramatically increases the range that you can throw spears, javelins. Think of it almost as a primitive form of the